Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Why do sociopolitical communities tend to believe that the other side is filled with more radical folks? So what I mean by radical is there's some kind of general notion of some kind of centrist position. And I realize that I'm radical on my side, let's say, and then you might think you're radical on your side. We all sort of have some understanding about how we deviate from the mainstream. But most sociopolitical communities feel that the other side, the opposition, is filled with more radical folks than is our own side. Right? Now, there's two kinds of biases that lead to this perception. And, well, the first is that even on my own side, I don't agree with those that are more radical than me. Right? They're making stronger claims. As you get more and more radical on your own side, they're in some sense agree with you. Yeah, you kind of agree with me, but you suddenly have bit onto more things. You've come to believe further things that I don't think that there's evidence for, or I think are irrational in various ways. So you may agree with me because I'm making more limited claims, but I won't agree with you. So when I'm retweeting or making claims or stating things or saying, hey, Doug is, here's somebody I agree with or someone I disagree with, but to the extent that I'm saying here are things from our socio-political community, I'm going to be elevating and amplifying voices that are similar to my own or less radical than my own. So from my point of view, if you were listening disproportionately to me, you'll hear views that are as radical as mine or less radical. And so generally within the community, for any level of radicalness, those people will be just tending to amplify the viewpoints less radical than them or as radical as them. So the entire curve of how many people there are as a function of how radical they are on my side, what you'll actually hear coming out of it will be highly biased towards the more reasonable positions, the less radical ones. The voices of our own side will typically bias it so that we hear ourselves as being less radical. Now, the other side isn't necessarily hearing our voices at all. They're disproportionately hearing their own voices. And, well, who is the other side typically talking about on our side? When they're mentioning our side, they're disproportionately likely to mention the most extreme of our voices. They want to amplify our most extreme voices. In fact, they want to censor us, something I talked about in a recent Science Moment video, us being the more reasonable voices. Your own community's statements that bubble up about yourself will be biased towards the more reasonable. Your own community's statements about the opposition will be biased towards their most extreme. And so this is an illusion that your own side is more reasonable than the other side. Your specific position may be more reasonable than some other specific person in the opposition, but your community as a whole, you're always going to feel is more reasonable than that of the opposition. And that was your Science Moment.